Well, Bilal Bhutto Zardari is Pakistan's foreign minister, and his famous political family actually comes from an area in Sindh that's badly affected by the floods. He came through from the family's ancestral home in Larkana. What's it like there?
I'm currently in Larkana, which is the north of Sindh, and around me is just water, and more water. There's not much dry land to be found. We've suffered a devastating monsoon, I don't even want to call it, sort of floods from the sky that have been ongoing since the end of June, and now we're up to the end of August. These monsoons have had devastating effects on Balochistan, Sindh, South Punjab, and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. The province of Sindh has been the most affected, with 23 of our 30 districts being declared calamity hit so far, and I'm sure the numbers have increased since I was given these numbers, but apparently 33 million households have been affected, displaced. To put that in some context, if we think about partition, I don't believe we crossed the 20 million mark then. It is a catastrophe on a scale that I have never seen before, and we've experienced floods and monsoons of historic proportions before, but this has really engulfed us all.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was a huge amount of international coverage of the floods in 2010. But are you saying that this is even worse?
These are much worse, actually. There were floods in 2010 and in 2011. And those floods, I mean, if we just, they'd affect either the right bank of the Indus or the left bank of the Indus. The specific districts, the riverine areas were badly affected, but we could, mobilize our resources from other areas, concentrate them in the affected areas. And despite the devastation, the operation around those flood relief efforts were by and large successful. The difficulty we face at this point in time is that this has affected both the right bank and the left bank of the Indus. Many districts are inundated by water. These are significantly larger floods than before, and we're still bracing ourselves because the Kabul River is in flood, and we're seeing horrific scenes from northern Pakistan of the floods coming down, and we worry, obviously, because we're situated here in the south. All the water, all the floods from the north come down our rivers and into Sindh. And our resources, everything from tents to medicines, are completely stretched. Our human resources are exhausted. Our bureaucrats, our rescue teams, who've been working since late June in every single spell, and their own houses, their own offices, everything has been affected and devastated by this. But at the moment, we're still in a rescue and relief phase of an ongoing calamity, catastrophe. And once we get out of the rescue and relief phase, we can start thinking about reconstruction and rehabilitation.
Is this one of those situations where, you're a minister in a civilian government, a senior minister in a civilian government, and is this one of those occasions when you just have to rely on the army, however much you'd rather not, because they can do it?
I think that everywhere across the world, whether if you look at the images of the Katrina in the United States, anywhere where you see a natural calamity of this scale, you'd have to rely on army and other forces. We're not only counting on our army, but also on our navy to add on to the efforts that are ongoing. The scale of it, I feel like all the terms don't do justice to this extent of this catastrophe.
Well, maybe one way to bring it home is just to give us an individual case. I mean, you have a lot of people. It's your electoral base. You're very close to the people in that particular part of Pakistan. What have you heard about the plight of a family maybe, or a particular situation?
Oh, and it's in
your
distressing. Everywhere I look, these are not sort of, abstract statistics. These are people that we know. They're either our relatives or associates or colleagues or people that I've seen my entire lives. Their villages are destroyed. Their houses are destroyed. Just for my own home district of Larkana, when I arrived before the last massive 3-day spell of rain, I was told that 80,000 families in our one district were displaced. And to put that into context, our policy thus far has been 1 tent per family. But the entire province's stock for tents, I think 90,000 tents at the time. We're ordering, we're procuring, but every day, everything we find is just not enough. There are not enough tents. The government's providing food and rations. People in their individual capacity have their kitchens running round the clock to try and provide food to those who've been affected. But we feel it's so so desperate because we feel like whatever we do is not enough. Supply is not meeting the demand. Their only income, their agriculture income, is completely devastated, with 80% of crops in my province being affected. I'm sure it's much the same in South Punjab. We're all agriculture-based economies. We faced the COVID pandemic. We faced the 2010, 2011 floods. I've never felt so overwhelmed by the sheer scale of this tragedy.
I mean, I just wonder how you deal with it individually. You come from a big, important family, a wealthy family, and you're surrounded by people who are in desperate straits. I mean, what happens when the head of a household comes to you and says, "Sir, I am completely finished here"? What do you say to them?
We're actually going to them ourselves. We're visiting relief camps and areas where people have managed to gather. We are assuring them we're here for them in their difficult time. We've called on the national media, on the international media, giving us a coverage to this climate catastrophe, as you mentioned, in 2010 and 11. We had that this time. What I'm really, really grateful for is the social safety net, the Benazir Income Support Program that was set into place in our previous government. That's the one vehicle through which the federal government is managing to provide direct cash support to flood affectees, but it's just not enough.
You're the foreign minister. You have some rich allies, Saudi Arabia, the United States, China. Which one's delivering?
As in, we're launching a UN flash appeal from Tuesday, but already our neighbors and countries across the world are reaching out, and it's not only expressing solidarity, but providing assistance to Pakistan, and we really do welcome all and any assistance that we've got so far. If there's one thing I'd like to emphasize through you to everybody who wants to pitch in and help this effort, that our number one requirement right now are tents. And that's something we find that we're very short on. So if anybody wants to help out, so that's an area where we do need the assistance. I think just the province of Sindh alone requires 1 million tents, and people are still shelterless because, as I said before, the supply and demand issues that we're having. Then going forward, we'll be focusing on rations and medicines, and because this water is going to stay. I mean, in other areas, perhaps in the north, like there's the devastation of the flood, but it passes. But here in Sindh, our geography is such that the floods come in, they cause the devastation, but in much of the areas, the water stagnates and remains there for many months to come, so for which we would have to worry about waterborne diseases and other medical issues that could arise from those.
And that was the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Bilal Bhutto Zardari.